The Blackout Club is a survival horror game like no other, not only because of its core mechanics, such as the heavy emphasis on stealth, as well its survival horror, but also because of its lore and its random encounter with entities known as the gods or the daemons, which in true are played by developers and voice actors, giving us tidbits of information here and there about the game's true lore. For those not aware of the lore, in a town with no internet signals nor Wi-Fi, a cult emerges that worships a being that controls them in their sleep for their own nefarious purposes. The teenagers of this city have formed a club to avenge one of their fallen members, but also to try to sabotage this cult with the quote-unquote help of some of these gods in a sort of turf war. Right now, we will tackle some of the cinematographic and literary influences and homages that the game gives us. These are not completely confirmed, but yet there's something fascinating about them. Again, this game was released on July 30 of 2019. It's been about 13 days since the game's been up, so this list may change in the future, and again, is not confirmed, it's only based on a speculation. Again, thank you. They Live. The John Carpenter cult classic depicts a world of consumerism and stagnation, of the rich and the poor in the city of LA, in a city covered with propaganda where money is king. But the plot of They Live is in fact a satire to show us how we care so much about material possessions, where our protagonist, played by Roddy Piper, shows through the usage of sunglasses how he can see the world for what it is. A bleak world filled with propaganda and subconscious messages of recruitment and worshipping the almighty dollar, as well keeping ourselves asleep to the truth being an alien invasion. But the core mechanic is something we constantly see through the Blackout Club, where by closing one's eyes, we can see the real world for what it is, where posters get mutilated and turned into symbols of hope and struggle. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. This 1920s German silent horror depicts a world twisted by shapes and forms, very particular in a sense, especially if you are into Tim Burton movies. But the core idea of its plot being the one of a cruel doctor, Caligari, using a young man for his nefarious crimes and murders after hypnotizing him and turning him into a sleepwalker, one that commits crimes while he lies asleep, not very different from what the entity does to the adults of Redacre. Dark City. The Alex Proyas movie that in several ways inspired The Matrix shows us an instance of a city stuck in 1950s Americana, in a city covered by night, with an ongoing mystery, in which pretty much every person falls asleep at midnight for the quote unquote strangers to perform experiments on them. The idea of a group of shady figures putting people to sleep to perform their experiments is something we can see repeated again in the Blackout Club, especially if we consider the true nature of these beings. As John Murdoch realizes, he is the chosen one in a fight against a cult of aliens who use humanity's potential for their own gain. Again, not very dissimilar to the situation of Red Acre, if we change the idea of John Murdoch for the members of the Blackout Club. The works of Stephen King. Born in Maine, he is one of the biggest influences for modern storytelling and contemporary horror, as well as narrative. We can see similar notions between his body of works and some of the facets of this game, so I will try to focus on the most poignant ones. The Losers Club from It. Yes, the Blackout Club itself can be seen as a pastiche of the Losers Club. Considering that both are fighting for the soul of their town, as well fighting an unknowable force that cannot be comprehended by human minds, as well both being manipulated by different entities for their own gain. In the novel It, the Losers Club is controlled by the Turtle, while the members of the Blackout Club in the game can be controlled directly or indirectly by one of the many gods. Cell. In this book slash movie adaptation, telephones and cell phones have released a signal which drives any person in the vicinity mad and insane, forcing them into violent behavior, sociopathic in nature, similar to a zombie, except that these ones are alive and fully aware of what they do. What makes Cell interesting from a narrative standpoint is how the phoners slowly become part of a hive mind. While the story of the book progresses, the phoners start unleashing their true potential, since now they're one vast network of minds into one, allowing them such things as reading minds and telekinesis. This is something that's been hinted by one of the gods in one of the game's audios, the idea that humans, or that the sleepers, are a sort of vessel for memories or for something even greater. And not only that, in the book or in the novel, we can see how the phoners create or imitate a signal from their throats similar to static, and whenever one of them gets killed in the book, the rest of the hive mind knows. It's a similar notion to what happens when one of the sleepers or one of the lucids gets taken down. They suspect that something happened, but they're not fully aware of what. Insomnia. In this novel, we can see how an old man, known as Ralph, is incapable of sleeping, developing insomnia. But as the book progresses, we can see how he starts seeing auras. It's thanks to this that he discovers small creatures that he calls the Bald Doctors, which represents life and death. but one of them went rogue, the one known as Atropos, which is trying to kill somebody who's part of a prophecy connected to the Dark Tower mythos. His inability to sleep, granting him an advantage over his target, granting him the ability to see things that the rest cannot see, is something very similar to the mechanic of closing one's eyes in the Blackout Club. The Mist, Firestarter, and the Stand. As the game starts its prologue, we can hear how Isabella has an argument with her mother, mentioning how she works in a government facility with aliens, which is interesting from the narrative of Stephen King, since some of these books, and these three books in particular, mention the existence of a government facility and a government agency known as the Shop, which does different types of scientific exploration. In the Stand, they may be the ones behind Captain Trips, as well one of the many government agencies trying to stop it. In Firestarter, they are the ones who gave a little girl the capacity of creating fire out of thin air. And in the Mist, they were the ones who brought the mist and the creatures through Project Arrowhead. The Children of the Corn. As mentioned earlier, we already know there is gods that help or detriment the teenagers of this game, some more bloody than others, to which I wouldn't be surprised if this is a direct homage to the short story The Children of the Corn, in which a god known as He Who Walks Among the Rows is demanding for blood sacrifice and for punishment to those who attempt against him. The Hearts of Atlantis. In this collection of stories, a group of evil beings are chasing again another old man who happens to have a type of power. These ones are trying to locate him in a vicinity within a town. The thing is that the quote unquote little man in yellow coat communicate by leaving hints about the identity of their target through missing pet posters, not too dissimilar to what we can see in the game itself for one or many of the missing children. The Long Walk. In this novel, we see how children and teenagers are picked for a national sport in which they must run and withstand a walk through Maine and Canada. The interesting bit is that those who are left behind are taken by something, a creature ambiguous on its nature and on its purpose, only known as the Dark Figure. This could itself be a reference to the Shape, the invisible stalker who chases the members of the Blackout Club. The Man in Black, also known as Walter O'Dym, also known as André Linoge, but most famously known as Randall Flagg. He represents an idea of the anti-American dream, the living nightmare, the Antichrist, if one might see him that way. This character spans across many of the King's books, but his nature for evil and his dark intentions, as well as the fact that he's known as the Walking Dude or the Walking Man, could be a reference to the Shape, on its nature, on both his ambiguity, but yet to his malice. The Cthulhu mythos. The ongoing idea of the gods is something we can see in different cultures, such as the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, the Japanese culture, the Chinese, etc. But the knowledge of eldritch beings behind what's going on in Redmond is something quite fascinating from the Lovecraftian standpoint, since these beings are shapeless, only known in name, which true motives lies in mystery. Their notions are good and evil are just simple and vague for us, for its true goals remain shaded in mystery. I would say that the beings on the Blackout Club represent a sort of eldritch abomination and cosmic horror, especially considering how they can communicate with you and how some of them can take you to a very sacred place, reminiscent of Relia. Phillips K. Dick asked Connell darkly. On the game, we can encounter a special unit known as the Lucid, a figure half awake and aware of his own existence and his servitude to one of the gods. The particular thing about him or her is how its face is ever changing, hard to pick, with eyes moving and mouth constantly distorting itself like a camouflage, quite close to the morphing suits used by the narcotics units on a scanner darkly. Twin Peaks. The idea of a town with a mystery is almost iconic by now, but the usage of colors red and white and black sometimes is particularly striking to the lodges in Twin Peaks, considering the bizarre and how dreams interconnect with reality, especially due to some of the posters that one might find in the daycare in Old Grove that depicts two owls next to each other, making the symbol of SAO. As quoted in Twin Peaks, the owls are not what they seem. Those are some of the most poignant references, Easter eggs, or homages I've been able to find in the Blackout Club so far. As the game progresses into 1.5 and 2.0, I'll keep an eye out, keep reading, keep watching movies, and see what else can I find. Again, it's been a pleasure doing this for all of you. Maybe in the future I'll do another video tackling how the propaganda center is very similar to the Ludovico technique in A Clockwork Orange. That's all I have to offer for now. This has been the expert texter joking smoking. Don't you think the Joker laughs with you? Until next time.